Welcome to the Winning Together podcast. This is Shay. I'm running point Aslet. I've got Hazel, Millionaire Mason, with me today. The coach and the coach. Special guest, Chris, the 5-tool player, Sanchez.
I like it.
How are you? How are you today, boss?
Brother. Good. Thanks for having me.
Hazel has developed a great relationship with you, and we invited you to come and speak at the I Am Recovery monthly workshops, the Into the Arena or the Arena Talks events. You're a Navy SEAL. You're a rad guy. You're a family man. You can protect people. You're a fighter. You're a dad. You're data analyst?
Data scientist at
Data
Microsoft.
scientist?
I was going to say, if you leave that out.
I'll add it in there.
You've earned that, yeah, for sure. So the perspective that your life choices give you and bring to bear on being a person who does badassery in their life, that's why we wanted to have you here. Do you feel like a badass in your life?
I have always wanted to be a badass. I'll just say that. Like, that's always been like a goal, to be this like humble badass, right? And I remember, like, you go back and look at my journal, I've actually written things about that. And I remember like opening my journal like a few years ago and saying, oh yeah, I'm going to achieve this badassery by this age. And, you know, reading it, I'm like, man, I'm still not there, right? So I think it's, for me anyway, it's like a lifelong, like, never-ending pursuit.
I love so much that that's like been like a concrete goal because, and I love that you said humble badass, because that's the feeling that I get when I'm around you. I'm aware on the periphery grand scale of some of the things that obviously like being a Navy SEAL entails. And yet, so I see that and I respect that, but I also see this super humble guy. And, I think that makes it real badass.
It really does. Well, if you are not a humble badass, you're a punk.
You're just an ass.
Your badassery was back then. And as we know, used to bees don't make no honey. And it's a practice for sure. And being a badass at one area of your life or time of your life as an active SEAL in a war zone is much different than navigating teenagers, domestic life, and Microsoft, for sure. Mm-hmm. We want to thank I Am Recovery for sponsoring this podcast. It is the Win Together podcast. You can find them at imrtc.com or 801-407-9998. We know your time is valuable, and more important, managing your energy is more important than managing your time. We promise we will generate energy for the time you invest with us today. Chris, 5-tool player, the kid who wasn't outstanding per se in anything, but is an outstanding complete player in his life. We only have a certain amount of time. What are the things that you really want to highlight, share that to that person who is listening, who has to hear what you have to say so that they can find a way to win?
I'll just start off by saying that, those of you listening, you are worth it. Like, whatever you're going through right now, like, who you are, becoming that, whatever it is you want to be, it is so worth it. Right? I couldn't, having been, down in the dumps myself on several occasions of my life, like, I am so grateful that I've always made the choice to take that higher and harder road rather than, settle for mediocrity. Right? I'm so glad I didn't do that. So that's my message to those that are listening is you're worth it. Like, the journey is worth it, and the reward is worth it.
Hazel, can I get an amen to that?
Amen. I mean, I'm a huge proponent. That seems like a silly word, but believing that you're enough is a huge part of my journey and my story, and it's a huge part of what I do when I work with clients here. I think for some reason, and maybe addicts more in particular, we doubt our worth, or we let things of our past, undermine our worth. and we let that shame dictate us. And so that's a really powerful statement to say that you're worth it. And it's a really powerful statement also that you said that there's been times where you've been down in the dumps because you wouldn't look at you and your resume and ever think that was true.
So that's so interesting, isn't it, though? As three people who know how to do joy in their life, we can't imagine a life without tremendous hardship because that's how you do the joy. And so when you talk about that of, you're this and that and the other, which means, I don't know what we try and tell ourselves that means, because it doesn't add up to what it takes to become that person. So, and what I love about you, Chris, and that you're here is Navy SEALs is something you do or did. It's not who you are. Mm-hmm. So when I'm in that place of lowness and I don't know if my life even needs me maybe, or I'm just punking out and getting by, how do you find that who you are and not let what you're doing or what you're not doing define you?
Yeah, that to me, I don't know. That's kind of a tough question to answer because part of it has to do with like your self-awareness and your kind of your own self-identity, which some people kind of naturally gravitate to and others don't, right? Others need to be a Marine, to be somebody, right? And like, I'm a Marine, right? That's their whole self-identity, or I'm a Navy SEAL. For whatever reason, growing up, I always, like I said, I envisioned myself as like, I want to be this humble, bad A dude that knows how to choke people out, but isn't going to do it unless, provoked, and he's going to be a good husband, a good father. Like that was always part of my identity of like, that's who I want to be, and now I've had 20 years to live into that, so I've kind of always had that. So was I a Navy SEAL? Yes. Is it a part of my identity? Absolutely. Right. But I don't define myself as that, but that's because I have this other, persona that I've always had in the back of my mind. And have I lived into that now? Like I said, maybe not as much as I would have wanted to, at the age of 43 or 45. I can't remember my own age, but
please be older than me.
Well, and what we find is it doesn't matter. It's who you and how you're showing up now and the near-term, present future that determines who you are, not what you haven't done or where you could or should be at this moment. Something that's been coming up for you is how choosing or doing things that are harder for you now is a surefire way to develop self-confidence. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that.
So, I mean, Hazel, based off something you said earlier, like, oh, I'd be surprised that you're giving your resume and your credentials that you'd have these, lows in your life. Well, I don't remember how long, but for a long time, like I struggled with self-confidence. Like it was, even becoming, a SEAL, you'd think, oh, that's going to prop, someone up. But for me, for whatever reason, it didn't, and I just really, that was something I always sought, was to be more confident in myself. And over time, what I learned was that doing hard things, regardless of what that thing was, is really the only surefire path, right, to develop that confidence in yourself. And so, like I'm seeing it now with my teenagers. I can see that they struggle with that as well. But they've, for whatever reason, are not choosing to go on some of these hard paths, which I know so deeply they need, right? That if they just punch out on the other side, they're gonna be better for it, right? But hey, what do I know?
And they're germane to human existence and experience. No one gets out of doing joy without also doing hard.
But isn't it so crazy, like this? I mean, and it's a misconception that I have to say, oh, you're a Navy SEAL. That's crazy that you would have ever struggled with self-confidence. And yet...
Or you're a data scientist who works for Microsoft. I can't imagine you struggle with confidence.
Right. I mean, the SEAL part sounds way cooler. But I think it's this crazy idea that we have as human beings that in order to be good at something or feel good about ourselves that we have to be perfect.
Or that you have to have always been good at it.
Absolutely.
Right. No, I think that's a huge fallacy, right? And it's pervasive.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling that growing up, like, oh, I'm not going to do that because I'm not good at it, right? And it wasn't, I don't know when, but maybe 10 years ago when so there there has been some good that has come about with the internet. But I think that was when I started like looking at YouTube videos and I was paying more attention to things like that. And it gave me a different perspective, like, oh, it doesn't matter how bad or how good you are at something. What matters is if you're interested in it, then start, and then just take another step, and then take another step, right? And then who knows? A year down the line, you're actually going to be pretty damn good at whatever it is you started with, you know. But growing up as a SEAL, it was like, you better be damn good at that from day one, and don't let anyone ever see that you had any faults or flaws.
Well, and that is day one in the SEALs, isn't it? Like, you go into beds, you better be freaking good,
right,
or we are going to get you out of here.
Right.
Okay.
Hey, one other thing, Shay, something I just want to comment on is I think we don't realize it, but like we're all walking around like we're icebergs. Right. So people see, because I get contacted all the time on LinkedIn, like, oh, this data scientist at Microsoft, they want to talk to me, right? They think that I have the key to the knowledge of the data science field or whatever.
Of data.
What they don't see, right? They see data science at Microsoft. What they don't see, that's just the tip, right, of the iceberg. What they don't see underneath the water is the 3 years of almost pure misery that I went through, struggling to find out whether data science was even the thing that I was going to get into, the dozens of job interview rejections, right? The paid coaching that I did, like all these different steps that I took just to get to that point, right? You don't see that, right? And the same thing with the SEAL teams. Like, right, you guys heard about my story, but you didn't see the kid struggling all summer long just to swim a mile in the pool. Right, on his own without any external motivation, right? That you didn't see that. You didn't see the year and a half that I spent, working at the hospital doing push-up after push-up after pull-up in preparation, for buds. All you see at the end is like, oh, the kid at 22, he's got a trident on his chest. How cool.
Doesn't that translate to recovery though? We get into early recovery and you look at somebody who has a year, you look at somebody who has a couple years, you look at somebody sometimes that has 30 days and you're like, that will never happen for me, right? You just see this person who,
you see the snapshot.
You see this person in your eyes who seems to have it all together, who seems to be living this great life, and you're seeing the tip of this iceberg, and you're missing out that person is struggling every day. But they've been struggling every day, but they keep moving forward. And that's why you see them where they're at. I think that's a really good point to make.
What you also need to understand about doing hard things is you can't make progress on hard things without acquiring skills, talents, or knowledge. And as you acquire those things, they allow you to solve other problems. So figuring out how to speak to people in Afghanistan, right? And there's 5 different languages. You have people you're trying to talk to translate and communicate and orders. Figuring out how to actually work as a team in that environment, even though it's not directly related to ones and zeros, since you knew and found out you can figure that out, that confidence you're talking about, it starts translating into other areas of your life. And then you start letting go of, I need to know, or I need to be good at it, to, I'll figure it out.
Because I figured other stuff out before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Winning Together podcast is all about what do you do to get where you want to get, or get what you want, or stop getting the poor results. When you are in that place where you feel low, or defeated, or lost, or unworthy, unseen, identifying one thing or 2 small goals that you can generate momentum and developing that confidence.
Yeah, so I think as I look back at any time that I was like going through a super low where I was like, man, should I just give up? You know? And when I say give up, I mean just like stop continuing this hard path. I think in every case, I started by reaching out to other people, right? So somebody who knew me or somebody who was working with me or whatever, just to get like an outside perspective. And I don't know that I did that like intentionally, like, oh yeah, I'm going to reach out to this person and they're going to save me from my woes. It was just like, man, I don't know where else to turn, and I need a fresh perspective. I think that's what I was looking for. And that was, reaching out to other people is kind of what got me going, right, in the right direction.
If you're an adult and you're listening to this, making friends as an adult is a different ballgame. Allowing other adults to see you is a real challenge. Hazel, how do you figure out how to let someone see you, even if it's to ask them for help and ask them for advice or guidance, because that stops a lot of people around us and they get stuck in this life that is not generating, joy or aliveness or connection?
I think that's, for me, if I am not happy with who I am, with where I am, with what's going on in my life, I hate that feeling. And I want to get out of it as fast as possible. Without letting anybody else know. Right. You just want to be there. I just want to have it. But I also am humble enough. I think humility is a huge part of that. And this job has definitely like burned that into my soul. When I am not where I want to be, I am smart enough to surround myself with people that are, and that I trust enough to say, what do you see that I don't see?
I look back at my story that I told earlier. I was talking about that time when I got off the platoon commander track. Right, I was pushed off, and for a year I was like depressed, and I just didn't know what to. And at the end of that, what I ended up doing was reaching out to a family friend to get an outside perspective, and it was so helpful because I was looking at it as like, oh, this is the end of my career. This is the end of my life. Remind us.
So you had successfully done your tours. Now you're in leadership and you are moving forward.
Yep.
Your dream job.
I was in my dream job, and I ended up getting relieved
with the nightmare boss.
Right, with the nightmare boss. To be fair, it was a nightmare boss for me. I'm sure he was great for other people, but for he and I, we just didn't see eye to eye.
Yep. It's not about the person. It's just, it was not some working for you.
Right. If it had been someone else, it may have been a different outcome. But I got relieved, and I remember initially I was like, oh man, that's great. I don't have to work for this guy anymore. But that only lasted for a week, and then that's when the whole depression and everything kicked in. In the middle of that, I reached out to this family friend, and from my perspective, I was like, oh, my career's over. I'm no longer a SEAL. I'm a disgrace. No one's going to want to hire me when I get out. It's this horrible thing.
My stock is zero.
Exactly. Yeah. And he talked to me, and he gave me this completely fresh perspective that I wasn't, of course, even thinking about, because it was completely in my head. And he shared with me, he's like, dude, there's your world is your oyster when you get out. You have so many opportunities that you're just not aware of right now. And hearing those words, it was what I needed, right? And something I want to say is like, yeah, when you're in that low and you reach out to someone and they give you a fresh perspective, that isn't the end. Right? That's the beginning. Now you have to do the hard work of actually putting one foot in front of the other. It's not like, he showered me with his advice and like the heavens opened and like there was the golden path, right? In fact, there was no golden path, but at least there was clarity enough for me, like, okay, this is the direction I need to start heading. That's the direction. It's not the path, but that's the direction. And I think like every time that I've been super low like that, reaching out to others is where it got me, got that ball rolling.
Well, and how does that apply to recovery, right? Recovery or addiction is isolation. The opposite of addiction is not abstinence, it's connection, right? And so when we are in our addiction, we are so isolated and we believe our own bullshit, you know, who it is and all that shame that I have. I just replay it over and over again. When you're in recovery and you're working a program, especially here at IM, you're surrounded by a therapist who's guiding you. And I like to say, more importantly, a life coach who is there to help you see what you don't see in yourself. And more importantly, to help you figure out how to achieve that. You know, or if you work a 12-step program, it's all about sponsorship, you know. I think you have to take advantage of the reaching out and not wallowing in your own ideas.
And, you know, Hazel, you and I wouldn't be here without great therapists either. So we went together. And
I love therapists too.
At certain places, you're going to find certain people with different skills matter. What I want to notice about you too, Chris, is that you went to people who would give you insight or feedback when you were willing to, you were open to whatever it was. You weren't trying to get specific feedback. And number two, it was with the intent to act on it. And I think when you're saying about people isolating in recovery, you might be surrounded by lots of people, but they're all promoting the punk in you. They're not the people who are, well, how are you being a badass? Or how are you stepping up? How are you being better? How are you struggling? What are you making mistakes on? And though that's the place you want. You want to go to the place of the people who are experiencing or doing what you want to do or who you want to be. And anytime I've gone there, the punk in you tells you that you're gonna be shamed or they're gonna look down on you. Not once when I've done what you've done, Chris, and went out and asked somebody for guidance to help, have they ever shamed me. It's always been, oh, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for doing something hard or different or taking advice or whatever.
Or they share theirs, right? They share theirs.
So when you reach out and allow people to see you, the people that are going to be players in your healthy life, in your life of connection, joy, there's not going to be shame or disgust or contempt or comparison or judgment. It'll be awesome. Let's do this.
Yep.
How can I help you? I found focusing on small steps in the direction you want to go is what starts generating momentum when you're at that low. So the hard things, finding a way to break them down to small, almost silly steps helps you get momentum in the direction you want to go.
I found that to be very true. So I was actually listening to Jordan Peterson today in the car. For those of you who don't know, he's a psychologist up in Canada.
Extremely worthwhile.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really.
for sure.
He's got a book out, 12 Steps.
12 Steps to Living or something like that.
Yeah, really good. Unique voice, right? Very refreshing. You don't hear that very often. But he was talking about how you build mental toughness, right? And how you develop confidence. It's the same stuff that we've been saying today. But he was saying, like, you know, the further you can break it down, like the more granular you can get in those steps, he's like, the better, right? Because then you can really, you know, like accomplish it. And he's all about accomplishing like these little small things and just having them add up over time.
I love that.
I shared that story about you gotta in buds, you're not trying to live week to week. Sometimes you're not even trying to live day to day. You're trying to live like evolution by evolution, right? Getting through the 2-mile swim, right? Just get through that. Okay. And then after that, you got to get through the obstacle course. And then after that, you got to get through surf torture. And if you're looking like, oh man, I can't wait till the end of the day. If that's on your mind,
you're out.
You're
yeah.
out.
And I've read, some different SEALs experiences, and they've said the same thing where you just go meal to meal.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just go meal to meal. You don't even think about the end of the day or the end of Hell Week. You are just get me to the next meal, which translates in our area for sure.
I'm not surprised at all that, we didn't do a lot of prep, but I'm not surprised at all that picking a fitness action, pairing it with listening to inspiring, encouraging, empowering content, E.T. the Hip Hop Preacher, Jocko Willenick, Les Brown, Impact Theory, totally changed my life. And pairing a habit of some physical activity, listening to good content, and doing different as a way of becoming a different person. It's exactly the pattern I follow too.
Yeah. Yeah, all those things you mentioned, like sometimes I won't even put it like on working out. Sometimes I won't even put on workout magazine. I'll just put on Tom Bilyeu or Jordan Peterson. I just listen to them in the back because it's so inspiring.
Yeah.
You know, might as well be, you know, Tool or Metallica playing in the background while I'm doing a lift, you know?
So if I'm in recovery and I'm establishing, or if I'm just a person, or I have a family, or my dad died recently, or my wife is really distant, any of those people will qualify for this podcast too. How do you decide and choose the hard things now? You're in a place where your family's working, your job's working, your life is working, you're healthy, you're fit, you're good looking, you speak well, you know, you maintain your spirituality. How do you choose what hard thing do you choose to do now? How do you figure out what the most valuable next hard thing is to do?
This is a great question because, like, as a human being living on planet Earth, there's never a shortage, right, of hard things to do in your life. So number one is you want to confront those, right? You want to take those head on. But the question you're asking is, well, out of the myriad of things you could choose, like which one do you go with? And that is ultimately going to come down to your value system, right? That you've developed over time or that you're currently, you know, developing. And so for me, that has a lot to do with my faith, right? And seeing things from an eternal perspective and recognizing that, you know, this life is extremely important and very you know, meant to be lived, but it's not the end, right? There's definitely consequences beyond the grave. That I get that belief system, right, drives a lot of the values, which in turn determines for me which hard thing to take on. And so we've all heard the acronym SMART when you're setting a goal, you know, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. I think what often gets overlooked sometimes is the R part, the relevant. Is it relevant to your life and what you're doing and what's important to you right now? And we talked about, you know, before this podcast is, for me, a goal of mine has always been to bench press 300 pounds, right? I came close in my early 20s. I was like 270 something.
And what do you weigh? 180?
Yeah, 175 on a good day.
So that's a huge achievement.
Yeah, for me that would be a big deal, and especially after, you know, post 40. You know, to say that I benched 300, like, you know, after
that's
I was 40,
badass.
That's pretty badass. And I've kind of put it on the back burner, like, okay, that's something I want to do. But as I'm going through this matrix of, okay, well, what's important? I've kind of come to realize, like, I could set aside a year of my life, right, and really focus on that, eat right, train right, you know, put on 15 pounds a month, you know, to get to that goal. And at the end, hit 300, maybe tear a pec in the process. I don't know. And at the end, be proud of that, right? That's a hard thing to do, you know, build confidence. But I don't know that that's remotely close to, like, some of the hardest things that I actually could do, which for me right now would be like develop a strong relationship with my 18-year-old son who's driving me up the wall right now, you know, support my wife better as she's going through the anxiety that she's currently facing right now. Because anxiety, what she's going through right now, I don't understand it at all. Never been an anxious person, never experienced what she's experiencing, but I have to be compassionate and patient and all these things.
You want to be. That's how you said you'd show up in the relationship.
If I do, I don't remember that. But in all seriousness, like for me, that's harder than bench pressing 300, right? Because with 300, I know the path to that. Like, it's clear. Supporting
and it's up
my
to
wife.
You. It's just you. The path to 300 pound bench press just involves Chris.
Right.
And that's, I think, now,
ooh, that's a good point.
That's not who you are, right?
Right.
And I kind of am glad that you brought that up because I love your wife, Shelly, so much. And she is, like, enmeshed in this anxiety that she can't figure out right now. Mm-hmm. And you being there and showing her compassion is going to be a huge part of the key for her to get out of that. And you're right. Like, that's not Chris becoming more of a badass by getting stronger. That's Chris becoming more of a badass because part of Chris is being this loving husband and creating this bond in a marriage that you haven't really been able to form because you've been deployed and been gone.
Right.
And so
Or in school.
Yeah, or in school. And so now, leaning into that and leaning into being there for your kids, I think is the greatest, badassery that you could be after right now.
So to answer your question, it is how do you determine? Is you go back on your value system and determine what's most relevant, to you in your life?
Well, it's the values, but it's also what's the objective for the team. I think we talked about it too, of being, it's not, when you're out there, you're always part of a team. And it's the team success comes over your own, period. And I think you're representing that too, is it's not about me anymore. You are an end person. It wasn't, I need to be there for my family, or I'm working out, so now you're not working out. It's, I'm there for my family, and I'm being fit in the way that I can be fit that fits into the whole team winning.
Right.
I'm humble and I'm a badass. I am great at my career and I'm present for my kids. Option 2, allow yourself to win in multiple ways. How do you do this and that? How can I figure this out and that? Huge change in perspective. How has becoming a great leader in your life and becoming a great follower helped you get where you want to go in your life? You're humble. That's been a core value of yours, and it's seen you through. And you're an incredible leader. How has that duality served you well to get you where you want to go?
Yeah. So in the military, everyone's a leader and everyone's a follower. Everyone's got, you're always leading and you're always following in some capacity. But your question was like, how has that helped me in my life? You guys should have Jocko Willink on this podcast. He would articulate it far better than I.
We'd love to. You speak here in his place, yeah.
We all love him, so he's already here.
So then you're familiar with his dichotomy of leadership,
Yes.
right? Being humble but being bold, right? And then there's so much truth to that. Like, he didn't just bottle that up and throw that into a book. Like, that's his actual philosophy that he taught us when I was a junior officer growing up. So there's teeth behind everything that he's. There's lessons learned in blood behind everything he's saying. That's legit wisdom that he's spilling out.
Well, then the way I'm bringing this in is the end. You need to lead out in your recovery by asking for help from other people. You need to go to group and make it great by serving other people, and you will you're gonna lose yourself to find yourself. You've got to let go of the old to make room for the new. You got to close one door to open another door. Your emotions and your body will guide you in how and when to be a leader and when to be a follower, when to listen and when to talk. Your body knows. And, Hazel, you mentioned this, that if you're trying to numb one thing, the pain of not being worthy, you numb all the joy and all the good stuff too. So if you're going to open up your heart, that means you're also open to heartbreak. It has to be that way.
I've shared that before in group, and I've had clients push back against that. First of all, I did not say that. That's all Brene Brown. But I think I see the pushback because we think, I'm happy. I'm having fun. Or I'm happy in this area of my life. So I can compartmentalize and not feel this bad. And you can't tell me that that's not serving me because, look, I am happy. And the way I see it the most is when people don't want to deal with that really dark shame or that really dark trauma or, that kind of stuff. If you think that you can live a happy, joyous, and free, sober life without ever unlocking that box and sorting through it and seeing what's in there, I don't think you will ever live as happy, joyous, and we live. Oh, I'm good.
Oh, it's a total lie that we'll buy.
I'm good. And I always say, we're not here to be good. We're here to be happy. We're here to find who we really are and live that out. And that goes beyond happy. That goes beyond, I'm having a good time. That goes beyond, I'm having some success. It's a deeper sense of self that I think you can't find unless you unlock it all.
2 things. We'll bring it home with this. Some ways that somebody can practice clarity in their life and apply it. But another question that I said on is, in all your training to do these incredible and superhuman and impossible things, what was included in your training on how to be a good person after your service? How were you trained to prepare for the scars of serving and giving and fighting?
I wish I had a better answer for that, but at least initially we weren't, right? It wasn't part it wasn't part of the curriculum, you know? But that changed over time. I think as people started coming back with trauma, both mental and physical, from the battlefields, from the war on terror, funding started opening up, and we started getting resources in the form of, you know, marriage and family counseling, psychology, psychologists, and it was a free and open resource so that, you know, people that wanted to, you know, work on that had the opportunity to do so in a very non-judgmental and private way. So, and I've been out for 4 years. I gotta imagine the resources are even better since then.
So this is a personal question. Do you take advantage of those resources yourself?
I did. I remember going through some resiliency, like therapy sessions.
I love that.
Yeah, with a few people, with my whole family.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Even the badass SEAL.
Well, that's the thing is, badasses are as badasses do. And
Right.
just because you can fight somebody doesn't mean you can figure out your homework. And just because you can lead all these people doesn't mean you can connect with a teenage son. But figuring it out does transfer. But being tough shit does transfer. But being somebody who wants to win, that does transfer. Mm-hmm. And then you become that person. I'll figure it out. I love you, son. We'll figure it out.
Yep.
I love you, wife. We'll figure it out. I love you, body. I love you, life. I'll figure it out. We'll get there. How can someone listening practice seeking clarity in their life to get clear on where they need to go or what they need to do to get there?
Yeah. The answer for me, from my direct experience, is you kind of mentioned it earlier in the beginning of the podcast, is if you want to get somewhere or you want to be something, then it really behooves you to hang out with the people that have already done it.
Yeah.
Right? Talk to them. And that's ultimately, in my experience, that's how you get that clarity. We're all born with these kind of inclinations to be a certain way, right? And so that's kind of the start. Like that's the initial path. But then as you go forward and you are starting to really get serious about it, that's when it really pays to reach out to people who are already doing it or have done it, right? And just talk to as many people as you possibly can to get that clarity. Because in doing that, you're going to find out two things. You're going to find out, A, what you really want, and you're also going to find out what you really don't want, right? And it's important to know both.
Both valuable.
Yep.
And I think you check yourself in doing that, and you're like, oh, this is what it's going to take. Mm-hmm. Do I really have that in me? Mm-hmm. Do I really want this thing that bad that I'm willing to do that? For me, I always want to know, and I always want to push myself to rise to that occasion. Mm-hmm. I want that gut check of, holy crap, it's going to take this. Let's go.
Right. There's something you said, Hazel, by the way. I just want to make sure that this is, because it really touched me. Like, I really liked what you said about, hey, you kind of deserve to be happy, and you were put on this earth to be happy, and you should really, that's worth fighting for, and you should, in some ways, I almost feel like that message is almost like not okay, right, in society. I almost feel like ashamed sometimes. Like, well, like you should push yourself, but like you shouldn't push yourself too hard, And my experience is that you should push yourself as hard as you possibly can, right? Because you're going to just be better for it, and you're going to be a happier person for it, When I was struggling over the last 3 years professionally, part of me was like, well, you've got a great job. You should just be happy with that.
Satisfied.
And just be satisfied, right? Don't push for this data science thing. Just be satisfied with what you got. Because look how many people in the past have suffered and just gone to a miserable job that they hated.
It's
right?
a lie.
For the
It's
family,
a lie.
right? They do it for the family.
Yep.
And that's what I was
punk
starting
out.
to tell myself.
Yeah.
I was like, well, it'd be selfish for me to want to be fulfilled at my job,
you
my
today?
career,
Yeah.
but then also have this family, and to economically do well. Like, I shouldn't have all that. And the success story is, I said, screw that. I am going to have all that. And I shouldn't have to apologize for that. And so that's the message that you're articulating. And I just wanted to jump on that, like, because you deserve as much happiness as you're willing to take responsibility for.
I love it. Yes.
Right?
That is winning together right there. That is the attitude. Listen to that again and grab a hold of Chris, the Navy SEAL. I've got the family, I've got the career, I've got joy, I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm connected. That's the guy you want to follow, and that's the attitude he is. So do that. Hazel, final thoughts?
No, I just love it. We have to do this again because there's always more, choosing your heart and, sharing stories of that. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Hazel, for attracting rad, badass people in your life, because we wouldn't know Chris without you. And without you going to where the place in your life that's hard and finding out, hey, I can be whoever I want to be. I'm going there. Who do I need to get around me? Chris, that's who I need to get around me. And thank you so much for joining us. Your energy is phenomenal. Your face is lit up. Your energy, it's just great, powerful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Option to be a warrior in your recovery and fight for joy and abundance and success and family. And anyone you know who has been through service for our country that we can serve with our recovery skills and our coaching, I Am Recovery can be there for them and help them heal and connect and find a way to win in their lives. We will be there for them. Option to call I Am Recovery, 801-407-9998.
And I answer that phone, so give us a call.
Hoorah! Call Hazel. I've got a million ways to win with you, Mason. Special guest today, Chris, the 5-tool player Sanchez. You've brought outstanding energy to the Winning Together podcast today. Thanks, Rockstar. I'm Shay. I run Point Aslet. Truly got to lead and follow these two humble and badass human beings today. We love you. All of you. All the way, no matter what. No judgment. Have a great day.